Welcome to the second video in this series, The Beginner's Guide to Rails 7. Now, in the previous video, we used the scaffolding to create a task controller and model so that we can add to-do, create our to-do list. We're going to start over in this video, mostly so that we can redo the task controller from scratch without having the Ruby or Rails generate all of our code for us. So our goal for this video is to create our site layout. We want to create our navigation and get all of our CSS set up, and also create a few static pages. Static pages don't pull any content out of the database, and they look the same for every person that visits the site, which is why we call them static pages. Now, we have a couple of CSS frameworks that we can choose to deal with. Now, CSS, we could write it all on our own, or we can choose some frameworks to kind of speed up the development process. And the one we're going to use in this video is Bootstrap. You can read more about Bootstrap and getbootstrap.com. And it's really easy and fast to create a good looking website without having to worry too much about our layout and stuff like that. That's why we're going to use Bootstrap. If you do want a more advanced option, we can use Tailwind CSS, which is a really great option, but that is a little bit more advanced. But we'll focus on Bootstrap because our goal in this is to learn Ruby on Rails, not really learn a lot of the CSS stuff. So let's go ahead and jump in and create our new application. So running the Rails new command again brings up all of this help that we can have. And just like before, we're going to use the same default SQLite 3 database. But again, if this is an application you want to deploy, you probably want to switch to either Postgres or the MySQL database. And then we also have down here to choose our CSS processor. And as you can see, we have Tailwind, Bootstrap, and some other options. And of course, you could just stick with straight Sass or regular CSS if you want to. But we're going to go ahead and choose the Bootstrap option for this, which makes installing Bootstrap into our application really easy because the generator is going to already generate that and include that. By the way, that also means that we're going to be using the esbuild JavaScript that will build our CSS and our JavaScript and deploy those to our assets directory. So let's go ahead and create our new Rails application. So we'll go Rails new, and this one I'm going to call to-do because we can still create a to-do list. But I'm going to also add auth because we're going to have authentication eventually in this where users can sign in, create their own account, and have their own individual to-do list. So we just want to add that option to do Bootstrap. So this will go ahead and generate everything for our new application and also include Bootstrap in our application as well. So just wait for all of this to finish. And so it did the same thing as before, and you might notice in this log that we see up here that we are installing Bootstrap into our application as well. So I went ahead and opened up our application in our text editor, Visual Studio Code, and then also this procfile.dev. If you notice, it will start our Rails server and a JavaScript and CSS build process so that our JavaScript and CSS will get compiled as we save changes to our file. So we can go ahead and open a new terminal, and this will start off in our to-do auth folder that we just created. And then we can start all of those processes with foreman start and a -f procfile.dev. So we're choosing that as our procfile. And that will get our Rails server started and also a process to compile our JavaScript and CSS. Now you can see if we go to localhost :3000, we get our Ruby on Rails start page. The first thing we'll do is in a new terminal window, we'll go ahead and create our first controller. Now we're not going to use the scaffolding that creates everything, and we don't need to create a model because this controller is just for our static pages. And so we'll just do our Rails generator, so bin/Rails G, and we'll create a controller. And we can either call this the home controller or the sites controller. I like using sites. And then here we can provide a list of actions or web pages, single pages that we want to create in our site. For now, I'll just create the index page. And this is like we did in the previous project, and you can see that it creates as a site controller. It go ahead and adds a route, and it creates a index.html. Now, if we can add a list, and it will create more pages and more routes and more views if we want to. Let's go ahead and open up our routes file, and this is in our config routes file right here folder. So in our config folder in here is our routes. Now we don't need the one that it added for us because we're going to map our root route to that. So in this again, we list the name of our controller. So that's the sites controller, then a hashtag, and then the action that we want to call. So whenever someone visits the root page of our website, they're going to go to the sites controller and the index action. So you can see in our sites controller, there's this index method. This method is what's going to get called when someone visits our root path. And it doesn't do anything, or it looks like it doesn't do anything, but by default, we're going to choose the view inside of our sites controller. So again, app, views, sites, and our index page, since this name matches the name of our function, this is the view that we're going to choose, and we can see what's inside of this view right here, and maybe we can go ahead and edit this, and we can say welcome to our to-do list. And so refreshing, we can see that we have welcome to our to-do list, and we can also see where this page is located. Now you might notice that this is a little bit different than our previous application because we already have Bootstrap installed, which has changed our default font. Let's go ahead and get some navigation bar in our site all laid out. So if we visit getbootstrap.com, we can see all of the documents about Bootstrap. Now you don't have to worry about installing it. It's already installed. So you can go to the docs and you can see all the different things that you can add in. Of course, you don't have to worry about installing it. And there's also some examples. And maybe we'll just use some of these examples right here. And I like the nav bar. Maybe we'll just get our nav bar from this one. And you have two choices. You can have a static nav bar, and that means that when you scroll, that the nav bar will scroll off of the page. And then we have a fixed nav bar, meaning that the nav bar will be fixed to the top, and as you scroll, the content will scroll underneath the nav bar. So we'll go ahead and click on this static navigation bar. And then, of course, we can view our page source. And again, we don't have to worry about connecting any of this CSS right here. And we can see here is our nav bar right here. Now there is this CSS that they've added into this example, so we'll look at that in a little bit, but let's go ahead and copy and paste this nav bar out of here and paste it into our code. Now where we want to paste it is our main layouts file, which we talked about in the previous video. And again, this is the page that's included with everything. And the Bootstrap is included with this code right here. And the JavaScript for Bootstrap's already included there. So again, we don't have to worry about that. But here inside of our body tag, we can even put a little comment here just to help us begin nav bar. And then another comment at the end and paste in our navbar. So one thing we want to be careful is make sure not to get rid of this yield call, or else any of the content in our views won't show up. But here's the navbar pasted in. We can do some customization of this, but let's go ahead and see how this looks. And so refreshing, now we have our navigation bar. And this is what's really cool about Bootstrap is it's automatically set up for both mobile and desktop. So if we have a mobile browser, you can see we have this little button that will show and hide our navigation bar. Now all we need to do is customize the links in this. Now this is purely optional. You can keep this anchor link tag in there, or we can let Rails generate this link for us. And it generates the link with through the use of a helper, and helpers basically generate HTML for you, at least the helpers that you use in your view. And so the link to helper, the first one is what we want to have show up, and I'm going to call this a to-do list. And the second one is the path, so the route path right there. And again, this is another little helper that automatically generate a path based on a path name. And this works with the routes file that we edited before. We also want to add in that CSS that we had before. And so we have a class, and the class was navbar brand, and that was in the link before. So this will generate the same link that was there, but now we're doing it with Ruby on Rails to generate that link. And now we can see it says top navbar, but I changed it to say to-do list, and we could try clicking on the link and it just goes back to this route path. Now we can see right here, we have all of our links that are in our navbar. This is a one that goes to our home page. And again, we can use this link to replace that. And then we have these other links. Now this ARIA current is the way that we let screen readers know that this is the current link or the current page that we're on. And also you can see that we have a little CSS here, this active right here, that makes this link stand out, so users can kind of use their navigation bar to navigate within their site. It kind of becomes a map form, so it is kind of helpful to highlight the link that they're currently on, and that might change based on what page we're on. So we could have a little bit of code. If I'm on the home page, then make this one active. If I'm on this page, then make this one active. So that could be a lot of code, but why don't we create our own helper, kind of like link to, so that we can just add link tos in here. And the more that we add, the more links we can, and it will make it super easy. Just do a link to and have that. So we're going to call that a nav link, and the nav link will basically generate all of this HTML. It'll also check to see if the page that we're currently visiting is this link right here, so it'll know to make it the active or current page. So if we go to the folders, there's actually each controller gets its own helper that we can add in helper methods. So when we have these helpers, we can go to this sites helper. And since this is part of our navigation, this is a good place to put it. And it could show up on any controller we have for our entire site. So we'll go ahead and paste in, or I'll paste in this code. You might have to type it in yourself, but basically we're going to create a new method called navlink. It's going to take two parameters. One is text, so that's the text that we want to show up on the link, and the other one is the path of where this link goes to. And you can see that there's no HTML in here that we can see, but this is actually a method that will create an HTML tag. And so this is the tag we want to create. We want to create the li tag. We want to have the li tag to have the nav item class on it. And you can see if this is the current page, the path that we're generating this link for is equal to the current page, then we'll add in the active class, and we'll also add that ARIA current page right there. And if it's not, then we won't include the active class and we won't include that ARIA current. So now we created a method that will generate us that li tag with the link inside of it. So we can go ahead and save that. And then going back to our application layout file, we can delete all these links right here. And we can use that helper that we just wrote, nav link. And the first one will be our home link, and we want that to go to the route path. And for now, just so that we have more than one, we can add another nav link, and I'll call this the about link. And for now, I'm just going to put a string in here to go /about. And so when we save that, now we'll have two links on our page using that helper. And so now let's refresh. And now we have this home link right here. And if you notice, it is highlighted or bold, or at least stands out from the about link. And when we click on the about link, you can see it goes to /about, but we don't have an about path anywhere. So this is what we get when we're developing and we go to a web page that Ruby does, or Rails does not know how to route to. It doesn't know what controller and action to call for this path. Now, if this were deployed to production, this would come back as a 404 error or a page not found. And let's go ahead and create this page now. So let's just kind of create this manually. We'll just add in another method here called def about. And again, just because we're not pulling anything out of the database, all we really want to do is choose the right view, and automatically it'll choose an about file. So if we name the file about.html.erb, now by naming this file the same name as the method name, this will be the view that gets chosen. So let's go ahead and open up that, and we'll just do h1 about. So next, we need to be able to create the route so that when someone goes to /about, it will call our about method. We do that in the config routes file. We add in whenever someone sends a GET request to the about path, then that should go to the site's controller and call the about method. So the hashtag separates the name of the controller and the method inside of the controller that gets called when somebody goes to /about. And when we refresh, we see that the about path works, so /about. And also we could see that our nav link helper is highlighting this as the current link. And then we can click to home, and now this one gets highlighted. So the nav link helper is doing all that. Now, one last thing we can do is go to our layout file, and before on our link to about, we just did /about, which we could keep doing, but we can also use the Rails helper now. That way, if we change the path, then this will just change automatically. So instead, we can put about path there. And since we created an about path, this becomes a new method we can call that will return /about. And saving that file and refreshing, everything still works. One thing we want to add to our application is a place to display the Flash messages. So I've added some more Bootstrap HTML code here. And inside of here, we have some Flash message code that will show up above our main content. And in here, for each Flash message, and just so you know what a Flash message is if you log in, you kind of want to flash a message on the page, hey, you successfully logged in. Or maybe you did something wrong, or there's something went wrong, you might want to flash a message on, hey, you can't do that. Or it's just a way to kind of communicate, a place to kind of put messages based on what happened in the previous request. So this is code that loops through all of the messages that might have been set, and it creates an alert on the page above the main content. Now, if you go to the documentation or the docs and get Bootstrap, you can scroll down on this side, and there's a bunch of components that you can use right here. You can even read more about navbars right here, but if you click on alerts, we have different kinds of alerts, like a primary alert. This is maybe what you might want to use to say, hey, you logged in, or you successfully logged in, or you successfully created a task. And then here is an alert that will stand out more. This is a danger alert that maybe something went wrong. So you can look at the HTML to do those. Another thing that you might want to add, and you can read through the documentation, there's other stuff that we can do with these alerts with Get Bootstrap. But going down here, there is a dismiss button. Let me refresh. And now we have this, this alert right here, and we can click the little X to dismiss it. To be able to do that, we just add a button in here, and we make sure we add the alert dismissible class. So I've included all of those classes in here. And now we have a little if statement depending on if we have a notice, which means, hey, you logged in, then we'll make sure that it says alert primary. And if it's not a notice, then we'll make it a danger. So we'll say alert danger. So this right here is called the ternary operator. It's a one-line if statement. if the name of the flash message is a notice, then it will be the primary colors show up in blue. If not, then it will be a danger and show up in red. We also have the alert dismissible and the dismiss button. And right here is our message getting printed out using the ERB print thing with the equal sign right there. So to test it out, back in our sites controller, I've just added on the about action, I've added a notice and an alert so we can see them on the page. If you notice, I'm doing a flash now because this is the page that we are going to view, and we'll see this notice and alert come up. And so when we click on the about link, we have a notice and an alert. And we can click little X and they'll slowly fade out. And now we have flash messages. Next, let's work on our title up here. I went ahead and changed the title to to-do list, but what we want to do is add maybe a subtitle up here based on what page we're visiting. So if we're visiting the about page, maybe it'll say about up there, and then this could say welcome up there. So to do that, I created a title helper method. This is a method that we can call to set our title, or more in this case, our subtitle. And basically you pass in the name of the title that you want. And this is called an optional parameter. Basically, we default it to true. So if they don't pass in anything, then it will be equal to true. We'll go ahead and save whether or not they want to show the title. And this means show it down on our page and not just up in the little tab of the browser. So if show title is true, we'll show it on the page. And then here we say content for, and we're going to use this colon title. So whenever we yield the title, it'll print out the name that they passed in. So up here, again, I changed the title to to-do list. And then this is some Ruby code. And basically, just ignore this part for now. Basically, all we're going to do is print out a string with the 2 spaces and a bar in between so that we can add the subtitle. And if you notice, I yield out the title. Notice the colon title is in there, and that's to match up with the content for tag that we did in this title method. So we do that, and what this is here is called a canceling if statement. So we put the if at the end. If this is true, then we'll cancel this, but this is a Ruby shortcut or syntactic sugar for if not. So if the title is not blank, then print this out. But if the title is blank, then we're going to cancel printing all of this out and we'll print nothing out. And then the other thing that I added is down here, I added a place to show the title on our page. So if the show title, this variable that we set right here, is true, then print out the title on our page. And notice we're doing the yield with the title inside of it. What that allows us to do is to replace this, and instead we can do that title helper call. Now remember, the title method itself doesn't print out anything. It just saves the title so we can print it out where we want it. I can just put welcome here, and we'll refresh, and you notice we get the welcome up here, and we also get the welcome down here, but this welcome comes from this part right here instead of being included in our view here. Now, we can also add this in our about. Instead of having the about there, we can replace that with a title call, and we'll say about. And just so we can see this, let's say I don't want about to show up on our page, I can do a false. So now the title won't show up on the page. And when I click on the About link, we get the About title up in the tab bar up here, but the About does not show up down here. Of course, I can replace this with true to make it show up, or I can just leave it off because it's an optional parameter to the title method. And now we refresh and we get the About title. And so now you can do some more. I recommend going to the Bootstrap here and looking at some of these components that you can add into your page. And you can add those components in. You can also adjust the layout of your page. Maybe get rid of the search bar up here since it's not doing anything, or you can leave it there if you plan on adding search to your site. I'll probably replace these with sign up and login links when we get to it. And we can also add a footer down at the bottom or a footer down here with maybe your copyright, links to your social media, or your privacy policy page, and so on.